Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's Weekly Forex Forecast for the 14th of October to the 18th of October 2019. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in this coming week and also in the weeks ahead. So I hope you're having a great weekend, guys. Let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. As always, we're going to start off by looking at the US dollar index. Now, last week, we started to make higher highs in the US dollar index and we pulled back. We highlighted 98.73 as an area to look for a pullback and a possible bounce to the upside. We did come back, we tested this level, but we failed to hold at the 98.73 and we started to break down below it. So very simply put, going into this week, this is now a sign of weakness coming into the US dollar index. We still have to take into account the fact that we are overall in an uptrend in the dollar index. So this near-term weakness could turn into a correction or some strength in the near term. That means that ultimately, although we're looking for further declines to the downside this week in the dollar index, so we'll be looking for a potential pullback and a retest of broken resistance, turning support in this area, failing, turning resistance at 98.73 for further declines to the next key area of support to the downside, 97.91. Although this is the price action we'll be looking for this week in the dollar index, because the dollar index is still overall in an uptrend, we are actually going into next week with a neutral, not a bearish, we could call it slightly bearish to neutral, but overall still a neutral bias on the dollar index. Now what this means is when we go through the dollar pairs, that there could very well be some currencies which are stronger than the dollar next week and some currencies which are weaker than the dollar next week. So this means when we go through the dollar pairs, we're going to be trading them on their own merits, on their own structure, without a strong bias in the US dollar one way or the other. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now in last week's forecast we identified the 54.85 as a key area of broken support, potentially looking to turn resistance, and we had this pullback last week to the 54.85. Now we've had this deeper pullback. This is a great place going into next week to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at 50.54, and if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at 49.11. So next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to turn support at the 1.09930. If we can get a pullback, and as always, if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance turning support, this is going to be the preferable place next week to start to look for bullish formations and patterns. If we get the right kind of patterns in this area, we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 1.1104. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and target 2 at the 1.1199. So next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now we start the week above a key area of broken support here, turning resistance, broken resistance, looking to turn support once again at the 1.23930. We had this big momentum move to the upside on the news that there is headway being made in the Brexit negotiations, and it looks like a deal is likely to be made before the October 31st deadline. As a result, we had this rally to the upside, and it looks as if this is going to continue going into next week. So very simply put, if we can get a pullback, because we're coming close towards the next key area of resistance to the upside, so to get good risk to reward on this, if we can get a pullback, and as always, preferably a pullback which comes back and retests broken resistance, turning support, this will give us the best risk to reward next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiated longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.2783, and if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and target 2 at the 1.2967. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to turn support at the 106.96. Any pullback in this area, and as always, preferably if we can come back and retest broken resistance turning support at the 106.96. This would be a fantastic place going into next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. It would also give us this inverse head and shoulders pattern which of course would be a bullish sign to the upside. If we can get a pullback in this area, and as I said, preferably if we can come back and retest the 106.960, this is going to be a great place next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and the target set for the 109.31. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to turn support at 0.6750. If we can get a pullback and if we can come back and retest broken resistance turning support, this will be the best place next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside of the target set at the 0.6687. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and target 2, the 0.6861. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now in previous videos we've highlighted the 0.63720 as an area to look for a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance. We have had a pullback towards this area, but we haven't tested it just yet. Next week, this is now a great area to start to look to see if we can get a retest. And if we do, this is going to be a place we're going to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 0.6130. Now, just bear in mind that because of the distance here, this may take a couple of weeks in order to get down to this support level. If you want a near-term target in the meantime, you can look to achieve these lows first. And then perhaps the following week, if we're still declining to the downside, we can look down towards 0.6130. But we are overall still looking, whether it's in the next week or so, at coming down towards the 0.6130, as we're still structured to the downside in the New Zealand dollar. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now something to note before we look at the US dollar Swiss franc is we actually closed strong on the US dollar Swiss franc last week. So the US dollar actually outperformed the Swiss franc last week. And yet the euro dollar, for example, and the pound dollar outperformed the dollar. So this is why we're going to this week again with a neutral stance. This is an indication that the dollar itself is fairly neutral because we have some currencies which are stronger, some currencies which are weaker. It is not the case that if the dollar goes up, everything else goes down against it. And if the dollar goes down, everything goes up against it. So we're using the dollar as a guide. And if the dollar is neutral, we have to trade these on their own structures because, as you can see, some currencies may be weaker than the dollar, while some currencies like the pound or the euro may be stronger than the dollar. So very simply put, in terms of the US dollar Swiss franc, if we can get a further pullback this week, and we highlighted the 0.9876 last week, if we can get a pullback and a retest of the 0.9876, this is going to be a great place going into next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 1.0049. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now last week we had this big sell-off to the downside on strong Canadian employment data. So very simply put, we are structured to the downside now. Going into next week, we are looking further declines to the downside in US dollar CAD. If we can get a pullback, and preferably if we can come back and retest broken support turning resistance at the 1.33050, this would be the preferable place as it would give us the best risk to reward in this market. This would be the preferable place to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 1.3110. And if we can get a breakthrough here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 1.3038. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, last week we started to decline down towards the target set at the 1453.00. For anybody not already involved in gold or already looking to short this last week, any pullback in this area, and as always, preferably if you're not involved and you come back and we can retest the 151730, this would be a great place once again, as it would give us the best risk to reward to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at further declines to the downside and initiating shorts in gold next week down towards the next key area of support to the downside of the target set of the 1453.00. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and also those of you who comment. I wasn't available to answer the comments last week, but I will do my best to answer the comments this week. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I hope you all have a very profitable week next week. The only thing left to say, guys, is take care and don't forget to trade safely.